I sat in the hospital parking lot, my hands trembling on the steering wheel like autumn leaves in a storm. The fluorescent lights from St. Mary's Medical Center cast harsh shadows across my face in the rearview mirror, and I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. When had I gotten so old? When had the lines around my eyes become so deep? They say a mother's love is unconditional, I whispered to my reflection. But what happens when you have to choose between two children? My phone buzzed again on the passenger seat. The fourth text in 10 minutes. Miguel, my son, my pride and joy, the boy I'd worked 3 jobs to put through Stanford, who was getting married tomorrow to a girl whose father probably spent more on lunch than I made in a month. Mom, I need you at the rehearsal dinner. Valentina's family is asking where you are. This is important. Important. I closed my eyes and let my head fall back against the headrest. Everything was important to Miguel these days. Everything except the daughter lying unconscious on the 4th floor. Machines breathing for her because her own lungs had forgotten how. Sophia, my baby girl, 24 years old and still called me Mommy when she was scared. She'd been hiking in Yosemite with friends when the accident happened. A loose rock, a fall, a helicopter ride that cost more money than I had. Traumatic brain injury, the doctors said. Could wake up tomorrow. Could wake up never. I'd been at her bedside for 72 hours straight, holding her hand, talking to her about everything and nothing, about how proud I was that she was studying social work, how she wanted to help families like ours, about how Miguel was getting married to a girl who made him forget where he came from. The phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Miguel. Mom, thank God. Where are you? The rehearsal started an hour ago, and Valentina's parents keep asking about you. This is really embarrassing. Embarrassing. Not worried. Not concerned about his sister. Embarrassing. I'm at the hospital. Mijo, with Sophia. You remember Sophia, your sister. A pause. I could hear classical music in the background, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses, a world I'd never belonged to, no matter how many floors I mopped to pay for his education. Mom, I know you're worried about Sophia, but she's not going anywhere. The wedding is tomorrow. My wedding. I need you there. She's not going anywhere. The words hit me like a physical blow. My daughter might be dying, and my son was worried about dinner party etiquette. Miguel, I can't leave her. What if she wakes up? What if she doesn't? His voice was sharp now, impatient. Mom, you've been there for 3 days. The doctor said it could be weeks, months, maybe never. I can't postpone my wedding because Sophia decided to go hiking without proper equipment. Decided to go hiking, as if the accident was her fault. As if loving the outdoors and wanting to celebrate her college graduation with friends was a crime. I'll try to make it, I heard myself say, though my heart was breaking. After visiting Hour's End. Good. And Mom, please, try to dress nicely. Valentina's family is very traditional. Traditional. Another word for they think we're beneath them. I hung up and sat in the silence for a long moment. Through the windshield, I could see other families coming and going from the hospital. A man pushing his elderly father in a wheelchair, both of them laughing at some private joke. A young couple, the woman's belly round with pregnancy, walking slowly toward the maternity ward. Normal people living normal lives, where love wasn't conditional on social status and mothers didn't have to choose between their children. My reflection caught my eye again in the rearview mirror. Isabella Martinez, 56 years old, night shift custodian at Stanford Medical Center. Proud mother of 2 children, one unconscious, one ashamed of her. I pulled down the visor and checked my appearance. My hair was pulled back in the same simple ponytail I'd worn for 20 years. No makeup. There hadn't been time. My clothes were the same scrubs I'd been wearing for 2 days, covered by an old cardigan that had seen better decades. This was who I was. This was who had raised 2 beautiful, brilliant children on her own after their father died in a construction accident when Miguel was 8 and Sophia was 5. This was who had worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices at night, watching neighbors' children during the day, selling tamales on weekends to make sure they never went hungry, never went without. This was who Miguel was ashamed to introduce to his future wife's family. I started the car and drove the 45 minutes to Rosewood Manor, the most exclusive venue in Palo Alto. The kind of place where I would have cleaned the bathrooms if they'd hired people like me. Instead, they probably had a service that charged more for one night than I made in 2 months. The valet looked surprised when I pulled up in my 15-year-old Honda Civic between a Tesla and a Mercedes. I handed him the keys, noting how he glanced at my scrubs with barely concealed disdain. "I'm with the Martinez-Chen wedding," I said, lifting my chin. "I'm the groom's mother." His expression shifted from disdain to confusion to something that might have been pity. "Of course, ma'am. Right this way." The interior of Rosewood Manor was everything I'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, flower arrangements that cost more than my monthly rent. I stood in the doorway of the dining room, searching for familiar faces in a sea of designer dresses and tailored suits. There was Miguel, impossibly handsome in his navy blazer, laughing at something Valentina's father was saying. He looked so much like his father in that moment that my chest tightened with old grief. Ricardo would have been so proud to see his son here, in this world of privilege and opportunity. Valentina stood beside Miguel, radiant in a dress that probably cost more than my car. She was beautiful. I had to admit, delicate features, perfect posture, the kind of effortless elegance that came from never having to worry about money. Her father, Dr. Robert Chen, was a successful plastic surgeon. Her mother had been a model before marriage. They were what Miguel called established. I was what they called the help. "Excuse me." A young woman in a black dress approached me, clipboard in hand. "Are you with the catering staff? The service entrance is around back." I blinked. "I'm Isabella Martinez, Miguel's mother." Her face flushed red. Oh, I'm so sorry. She glanced at my scrubs, then at the other guests in their cocktail attire. "Let me show you to your table." She led me to a round table in the corner, far from the head table where Miguel and Valentina sat with their immediate families. My table mates were the wedding coordinator, the photographer, and what appeared to be distant relatives who had also been relegated to the outskirts. I sat down and smoothed my cardigan, trying to make myself smaller. Around me, conversations flowed in the easy rhythm of people who belonged, stories about vacations in Europe, children at Ivy League schools, business deals and charity galas. I nodded and smiled when spoken to, but mostly I listened and watched. Watched my son, who hadn't looked in my direction once since I'd arrived. Watched Valentina, who kept glancing over with an expression I couldn't quite read. Watched the other guests, some of whom seemed to be wondering who the woman in scrubs was and why she was there. The conversation at my table had turned to the wedding arrangements. The photographer, a chatty woman named Jennifer, was gushing about the floral budget. $30,000 just for flowers, she said, shaking her head in amazement. And that's not including the bridal bouquet. I've never seen anything like it. "Well, the Chens spare no expense," said Valentina's cousin, a perfectly manicured woman whose name I'd missed. "This is their only daughter's wedding. They want it to be perfect." "What about the groom's family?" asked the wedding coordinator. "Are they contributing?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Eyes darted in my direction, then quickly away. "I don't think," the cousin began, then stopped herself. I mean, they're lovely people, but they're more simple, traditional Mexican family. You know, very different background. Simple, traditional, different. All polite ways of saying poor. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from anger. Simple. I had raised 2 children alone while working 3 jobs. I had put Miguel through Stanford on scholarships I'd helped him apply for, staying up nights to help him write essays while I was exhausted from cleaning offices. I had never taken government assistance, never asked for handouts, never let my children go without the things they needed. But I was simple. Actually, I said, my voice quiet but clear, the groom's family is contributing. All eyes turned to me. The cousin raised an eyebrow. Oh. I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for 3 days. The envelope containing $30,000 in cash, my entire life savings, plus a loan against my tiny house that would take me 10 years to pay off. $30,000, I said, placing the envelope on the table. For my son's wedding. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer, the photographer, stared at the envelope with wide eyes. The wedding coordinator looked like she might faint. Valentina's cousin opened and closed her mouth like a fish. I had no idea. The cousin stammered. I mean, we just assumed. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply. But she had implied. They all had. And somewhere across the room, my son was laughing with his new family, while his sister lay unconscious in a hospital bed, and his mother sat with the hired help. I stood up, the envelope still on the table. Excuse me, I said. I need some air. I walked out of the dining room with as much dignity as I could muster, my head high and my back straight, in the marble foyer. I leaned against a pillar and closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. Mrs. Martinez. I turned to find Valentina approaching, her expression uncertain. I wanted to apologize, she said. My cousin, she doesn't always think before she speaks. She didn't mean anything by it. I studied her face, looking for sincerity. She was young, I reminded myself. Younger than Sophia. Maybe she really didn't understand. Valentina, I said gently, can I ask you something? She nodded. When you look at me, what do you see? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. What do you mean? I mean, when you look at me right now, what do you see? Be honest. She glanced down at my scrubs, then back at my face. I see Miguel's mother. I see someone who's worked very hard. I see... She paused, struggling. I see someone who's very different from my family. Different. There was that word again. You're right, I said. I am different. I clean floors for a living. I shop at Walmart and drive a 15-year-old car. I've never been to Europe or eaten at a restaurant that requires reservations. Valentina looked uncomfortable. But I continued. But I'm also the woman who raised the man you're going to marry. Every scholarship application, every late-night study session, every dream he's ever achieved. I was there. When he wanted to quit engineering because the math was too hard, I sat with him until 3 a.m, helping him understand calculus. When he was homesick at Stanford, I drove 2 hours every weekend just to have lunch with him. Her eyes were wide now, and I thought I saw understanding beginning to dawn. So, when you look at me, I said, I hope you see more than just someone who's different. I hope you see the woman who made it possible for Miguel to be the man you fell in love with. Before she could respond, I heard my name being called. Miguel was walking toward us, his face flushed with what looked like anger. Mom, what are you doing? People are asking questions. People are asking questions. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm glad you're here. People are asking questions. I was just getting some air, mijo. Valentina and I were having a nice conversation. He looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with whatever he saw on our faces. Well, dinner's starting. We should go back in. I shook my head. I think I should go. Sophia might wake up, and I want to be there. Mom, please, not tonight. This is important. More important than your sister. He flinched at the accusation in my voice. That's not fair. You know I care about Sophia. Do I because you haven't visited her once since the accident? You haven't called to ask how she's doing. You haven't even sent flowers. I've been busy with wedding preparations. You know how stressful this has been. Stressful. Planning a party was stressful. Watching your daughter fight for her life was something else entirely. You're right, I said. This is stressful. For all of us. Which is why I think it would be better if I went back to the hospital. If you leave now, Miguel said, his voice low and tight, Valentina's family will think you don't approve of the marriage. And there it was. The real concern, not his sister's health, not his mother's feelings, Valentina's family's opinion. I looked at my son, this man I had sacrificed everything for, who was now more concerned with impressing strangers than supporting his family, and felt something break inside my chest. Maybe that's exactly what they should think, I said. I turned and walked toward the exit, leaving behind the envelope with $30,000. My son's shocked expression, and his future wife's family, who were probably already whispering about the dramatic scene caused by the simple, traditional Mexican woman who didn't know her place. As I handed my valet ticket to the young man who had judged my car, I heard rapid footsteps behind me. Mrs. Martinez, wait. It was Valentina, running in her designer heels across the parking lot. Please don't go, she said, slightly out of breath. I know this is awkward. I know my family can be difficult, but you belong here. You're Miguel's mother. I studied her face in the harsh parking lot lights. She looked genuinely distressed, and for a moment I softened. Valentina, I said, can I give you some advice? She nodded eagerly. If you want this marriage to work, don't ask Miguel to choose between you and his family, because someday you might not like the choice he makes. Her face went pale. I would never ask him to do that. You already have, I said gently, by making him ashamed of where he comes from, by making him feel like he has to hide who his mother is. Love doesn't require anyone to diminish themselves. My car arrived, and I tipped the valet with one of my few remaining 20s. As I drove away, I could see Valentina still standing in the parking lot, her perfect dress rippling in the evening breeze. The drive back to the hospital gave me time to think, to process what had just happened. My son was getting married tomorrow, and I had just walked out of his rehearsal dinner. There would be consequences. There would be hurt feelings and angry words and probably a phone call I didn't want to answer. But for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Sitka. Mary's medical center at 10 o'clock at night was a different world from the daytime bustle. The hallways were dimmer, quieter, filled with the soft sounds of machines and the distant conversations of night shift nurses. I knew this world well. I had cleaned these floors for 8 years, working the graveyard shift so I could be home during the day when Miguel and Sophia were young. The elevator ride to the 4th floor felt longer than usual. I used the time to check my reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothing my hair and trying to compose myself. Sophia didn't need to see me upset, even unconscious. She had always been sensitive to my moods. Isabella Carmen Rodriguez, the night charge nurse, looked up from her station with surprise. I thought you went to your son's wedding thing. Carmen had been my friend for years, one of the few people at the hospital who knew about my family situation. She was a few years younger than me, with 3 teenagers of her own and an understanding of what it meant to sacrifice for your children. It ended early, I said, not ready to explain what had really happened. She gave me a knowing look. Uh-huh. How was it educational? Carmen snorted. That bad, huh? Well, your girl's been quiet tonight. No changes, but her vitals are stable. Dr. Kim wanted to talk to you when you got back. Doctor. Sarah Kim was Sophia's neurologist, a brilliant woman about Sophia's age who had been surprisingly kind to our family. She always took time to explain things in terms I could understand, never making me feel stupid for asking questions. I found her reviewing charts at the nurse's station, her black hair pulled back in a neat bun, wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. Mrs. Martinez, she said, looking up with a smile. How was the rehearsal dinner? Word traveled fast in hospitals. It was interesting. Carmen said you wanted to see me. Let's talk in Sophia's room. We walked together down the quiet hallway. Through open doorways, I could see other families keeping vigil, an elderly man reading to his wife, a young father sleeping in a chair beside a child's bed, a woman about my age knitting while her husband dozed. Sophia's room was softly lit by the glow of her monitors. She looked so small in the hospital bed, her dark hair spread across the white pillow, her face peaceful in sleep. If not for the tubes and wires, she could have been napping after a long day of classes. Her brain activity has been increasing over the past few hours. Dr. Kim said quietly, it's a very positive sign. She's been responding to auditory stimuli. Her heart rate increases when you talk to her, and her eyes move under her lids when she hears familiar voices. I felt a flutter of hope in my chest. Does that mean she's going to wake up soon? It means we're cautiously optimistic. Brain injuries are unpredictable, but all the signs are pointing toward recovery. The next 24 to 48 hours will be critical. The next 24 to 48 hours. Miguel's wedding was tomorrow afternoon. Dr. Kim must have seen something in my expression because she pulled up a chair next to Sophia's bed. Mrs. Martinez, can I ask you something personal? I nodded, settling into my usual spot holding Sophia's hand. I've been working with families for 10 years, and I've never seen devotion like yours. You've been here almost constantly since Sophia arrived. That kind of dedication. It's rare. She's my daughter. Yes, but you have a son too, don't you? The one getting married tomorrow. I was quiet for a moment, trying to figure out how to explain the situation without sounding bitter. Miguel is... I began, then stopped. Miguel is successful. He's an engineer, lives in a beautiful apartment, drives a nice car. He's everything I dreamed he could be when I was working 3 jobs to put him through school. But somewhere along the way, he decided that his success meant he had to leave his family behind, not physically, but emotionally. He's ashamed of where he came from, ashamed of me. Dr. Kim was quiet for a moment, studying Sophia's peaceful face. You know, she said finally, I recognize your son's name, Miguel Martinez. He used to volunteer here when he was in college, in the pediatric ward. He was wonderful with the children, especially the Spanish-speaking families. He would translate for the doctors, help parents understand what was happening. The kids adored him. I stared at her. Miguel volunteered here. For 2 years, he always talked about his mother, how proud he was that she worked here. He said she taught him that service to others was the highest calling. Kim paused. He said his mother was his hero. Tears stung my eyes. That was a long time ago. People don't change that much. Mrs. Martinez, sometimes they just forget who they are. Before I could respond, Sophia's hand twitched in mine. Just a small movement, but enough to make my heart race. "Sophia, mija, can you hear me?" Her eyelids fluttered. Then, slowly, they opened. "Mommy." Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from the breathing tube that had been removed that morning. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." "Doctor." Kim was immediately at the bedside, checking Sophia's pupils with a small flashlight, asking her simple questions. What was her name? How old was she? What year was it? Sophia answered everything correctly, though her voice was weak and she seemed confused about where she was. "You had an accident, mija," I explained gently. "You fell while hiking. You've been sleeping for a few days, but you're going to be okay." Sophia's eyes, still cloudy with confusion, focused on my face. "You look sad, Mommy. Why do you look sad?" And just like that, I started crying. Not the quiet, dignified tears I'd been holding back for days, but deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place of relief and heartbreak and exhaustion, all mixed together. Sophia, weak as she was, tried to comfort me. "Don't cry. Mommy, I'm okay. See, I'm awake." "I know, baby. I'm crying because I'm happy. Where's Miguel? Is he here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. How could I explain to my daughter, who was just waking up from a coma, that her brother was too busy with his wedding to visit her? How could I tell her about the choice I'd been forced to make? He's getting married tomorrow. Remember? We talked about it before your accident." Sophia's brow furrowed as she tried to process this information. "Tomorrow. But I'm supposed to be the maid of honor. I bought a dress and everything." My heart broke a little more. Sophia had been so excited about Miguel's wedding, had spent weeks planning her maid of honor speech, talking about how proud she was of her big brother. "Mija, you were hurt. You've been unconscious for 3 days. The wedding, maybe it can be postponed." "No." Sophia tried to sit up, but Dr. Kim gently pressed her back down. "Miguel can't postpone his wedding because of me. That's not fair to Valentina." Even fresh out of a coma, my daughter was more concerned about Miguel's happiness than he had been about her life. "Let's not worry about that right now," Dr. Kim said. "You need to rest and recover. There will be other weddings, other celebrations." But Sophia was becoming agitated. "I have to call Miguel. I have to tell him I'm okay. He must be so worried." "Doctor," Kim caught my eye over Sophia's head and nodded toward the hallway. We stepped outside the room, leaving Sophia with Carmen, who had come to check on the commotion. "She doesn't remember the extent of her injuries," Dr. Kim explained. "It's normal for patients to have gaps in memory around traumatic events. She'll probably remember more over the next few days." "Should I tell her about how Miguel hasn't visited?" Dr. Kim considered this. "Not right now. She needs to focus on healing. Family stress can actually slow recovery in brain injury patients." I nodded, understanding, once again. I would have to be the strong one, the one who held everything together while the people I loved dealt with more important things. "Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Kim said gently, "I know this is complicated, but Sophia waking up like this, talking and remembering, it's a miracle. Don't let anyone make you feel like celebrating that miracle is less important than anything else." I hugged her then, this kind young doctor who understood what my own son couldn't. When I returned to Sophia's room, she was trying to use her phone with shaking hands. "Mija, what are you doing?" "I'm calling Miguel. I want to tell him I'm okay." I sat on the edge of her bed. "Sophia, it's almost midnight. Maybe we should wait until morning." "He's probably awake worrying about me. You know how Miguel is. He pretends he's not emotional, but he worries about everything." I did know how Miguel was, or at least, how he used to be. "Okay." I said. "But let me dial for you. Your hands are still shaky." I dialed Miguel's number and handed Sophia the phone. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Miguel, it's me," Sophia said, her voice bright with excitement. "It's Sophia. I'm awake. I'm okay. The doctors say I'm going to be fine. I'm so sorry I'm going to miss your wedding tomorrow, but I wanted you to know that I'm here, and I'm thinking about you, and I love you so much. Call me back when you get this." She handed me the phone back, beaming. "He's probably at his bachelor party or something. He'll be so happy when he hears this." "Pinta," I smiled and agreed, even though I knew Miguel was probably still at Rosewood Manor, dealing with the aftermath of my dramatic exit. Even though I knew he might not call back tonight or tomorrow, or maybe at all. But watching Sophia's face, seeing her happiness at being able to connect with her brother, I couldn't bring myself to dim that light. "Mommy," Sophia said, settling back into her pillows, "tell me about the rehearsal dinner. Was it beautiful? Did you like Valentina's family?" And so I told her about Rosewood Manor, about the crystal chandeliers and marble floors, about the beautiful flowers and elegant guests. I didn't tell her about being mistaken for the help, or about sitting at the vendor's table, or about walking out with $30,000 in cash sitting abandoned on a table. I told her the story she needed to hear, the one where her brother was happy and her family was whole and everything was exactly as it should be. Because sometimes that's what mothers do. We tell the stories that make the pain bearable, that make the world seem like a place where love always wins and families always stick together, even when we know better. I spent the night in Sophia's room, dozing fitfully in the bedside chair while she slept peacefully for the first time in days. The doctors had been cautiously optimistic about her recovery, but wanted to monitor her closely for the next 24 hours to watch for any complications. 24 hours? The same 24 hours that contained Miguel's wedding. I woke at dawn to find Sophia watching me with clear, alert eyes. "Buenos dias, Mommy," she said with a small smile. "Buenos dias, mi amor. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." She paused, thinking. "Or fell off a mountain, which I guess is what actually happened. My head hurts, and everything feels kind of fuzzy, but I'm okay. Doctor." Kim arrived for morning rounds, Joe, and I stepped into the hallway to give them privacy for the examination. The hospital was coming alive around me. Breakfast trays being delivered, day shift nurses taking report, families arriving for visits. My phone buzzed with a text message from Miguel Mom. "We need to talk. Can you come to the hotel before the ceremony?" No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened the night before, no mention of Sophia being awake, just a summons to discuss whatever damage control was needed. I was about to respond when another text came through. This one from an unknown number, Mrs. Martinez. "This is Dr. Robert Chen, Valentina's father. I'd like to speak with you this morning if possible. It's important. Dr. Chen." Why would Valentina's father want to talk to me before I could process this further? Dr. Kim emerged from Sophia's room. "How is she?" I asked. "Remarkable. Her cognitive function appears to be completely intact. Motor skills are good, memory is returning. I want to keep her for observation today and tonight, but if all goes well, she could go home tomorrow." Relief flooded through me. So she's really going to be okay. Barring any unexpected complications, yes. She's a very lucky young woman, and she has a very dedicated mother. I felt tears prick my eyes again. After 3 days of uncertainty, to finally have good news felt almost surreal. "There is something else," Dr. Kim said. "Sophia has been asking about her brother's wedding. She seems quite distressed that she's going to miss it. The wedding is this afternoon. I know, and normally I would never recommend this, but..." Doctor, Kim paused, seeming to weigh her words carefully. Sophia is stable enough to leave the hospital for a few hours. If she really wanted to attend the ceremony, and if she had someone to monitor her closely, it might actually be beneficial for her emotional recovery. I stared at her. You're saying she could go to the wedding? I'm saying it's possible. She'd need to be in a wheelchair, and she'd need to come back immediately afterward for observation. But if it's important to her, it is. Miguel is her hero. She's been planning her maid of honor speech for weeks. Doctors. Kim nodded. Then maybe we should ask her what she wants to do. When we presented the option to Sophia, her face lit up like Christmas morning. Really, I can go. I can still be Miguel's maid of honor. If you feel up to it, Dr. Kim said. But you'd have to take it very easy. No excitement, no stress. And you'd need to come back here right after the ceremony. Yes, oh yes, please, I have to be there. Miguel would be heartbroken if I wasn't there. Hearing her say that, Miguel would be heartbroken, made my chest tight with emotion, because I knew she was right, despite everything that had happened, despite his current confusion about what mattered. Miguel loved his sister. He would want her there, which meant I had to swallow my pride and figure out how to make this work. An hour later, I found myself in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel, where Miguel and his groomsmen were getting ready. I had called ahead, and he had agreed to meet me in the coffee shop. He looked handsome in his wedding day finery, crisp white shirt, silver tie, his hair perfectly styled. But there were dark circles under his eyes, and he seemed nervous in a way that went beyond typical pre-wedding jitters. "Mom," he said, standing when he saw me, "I'm glad you came." We sat across from each other at a small table, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, Miguel broke the silence. "About last night?" "Miguel, before you say anything, I need to tell you something." Sophia woke up. His face went white. "What? When is she okay?" "Last night, around 11. She's going to be fine. Full recovery, the doctors think." "Oh my God." He put his head in his hands. "Oh my God, I can't believe. Why didn't you call me?" "She did call you. She left a voicemail." He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking slightly. I watched his face as he listened to Sophia's message, saw the tears he was trying to hold back. "She sounds so happy," he said finally. "So normal." "She is." "She's Sophia. She's worried about missing your wedding." Miguel looked up sharply. "Missing it. But she's awake now. Can't she come? I mean, if the doctors say it's okay." "Actually, yes, Dr. Kim says she can leave the hospital for a few hours if she has someone to monitor her. She'd be in a wheelchair, and she'd need to rest. But she could be here. That's wonderful. That's perfect." He paused. "Mom, about last night. I know you were upset, and I understand why. I handled things badly. Miguel, we don't have to do this now. Today is your wedding day. Today should be about you and Valentina. But we do have to do this. Because I realized something last night. After you left, I waited. Valentina's cousin, the one at your table. She came up to me after dinner. She told me what you said about contributing to the wedding, about the $30,000. I had forgotten about the envelope in all the drama of Sophia waking up. I had no idea, Mom. I had no idea you were planning to give us that money. I thought you were just coming as a guest. I've been saving for your wedding since you were in high school. Mijo, it was going to be my gift to you. But where did you get $30,000? You don't have that kind of money." I was quiet for a moment, deciding how much to tell him. "I took a loan against the house. And I've been saving from my job at the hospital for 8 years. Every extra shift, every holiday bonus, every time I decided not to buy something for myself. Miguel's face crumpled. Mom, you can't afford that. You can't. What if something happens? What if the house needs repairs? Or you get sick, or... Then I'll figure it out, like I always have. But why? Why would you do that? I looked at my son, this man I had raised alone, who had exceeded every dream I'd ever had for him, and tried to find the words to explain a mother's love. Because when you love someone, you want to give them the world. And if you can't give them the world, you give them everything you have. Miguel was crying now, not caring who might see. I don't deserve it, he said. I don't deserve you. The way I've treated you. The way I let Valentina's family treat you. I'm ashamed of myself. Miguel, you're not perfect. None of us are. But you're a good man. You're kind and smart and hardworking. And you have the biggest heart of anyone I know. You just forgot for a while who you are and where you came from. But that doesn't change who you are at your core. Miguel wiped his eyes with his napkin. I don't know how to fix this. Valentina's family, they have certain expectations. And I've been trying so hard to fit in, to be worthy of her, that I lost sight of what really matters. What does Valentina think about all this? That's the thing. I don't think she really understood what was happening until last night. After you left, she asked me about my family, about you, really asked, not just polite conversation. And I realized I've never really told her about our life, about what you sacrificed, about who we are. I reached across the table and took his hand. Miguel, if Valentina loves you, she'll love all of you, including the part that comes from cleaning floors and working 3 jobs and eating rice and beans for dinner because that's what we could afford. I know. I think I know. But Mom, there's something else. He paused, looking uncomfortable. Dr. Chen wants to talk to you. Valentina's father. He asked me to arrange a meeting. I got his text this morning. What does he want? I'm not sure. But I think maybe Valentina told him some things about last night, about how her family treated you. Before I could respond, a familiar voice called out across the coffee shop. Miguel, there you are. We've been looking everywhere for... Oh. Valentina approached our table, beautiful in a white silk robe with her hair in curlers. She looked nervous, glancing between Miguel and me. Mrs. Martinez, she said carefully, I'm glad you're here. How is Sophia? She's awake. She's going to be fine. Valentina's face broke into a genuine smile. Oh, thank God. Miguel's been so worried. We both have... Actually, Miguel said, Sophia might be able to come to the wedding, if she's feeling up to it. Really? That's wonderful. I was so hoping she'd be able to be there. Valentina turned to me. Mrs. Martinez, there's something I need to say to you. About last night. I glanced at Miguel, who nodded encouragingly. I owe you an apology, Valentina continued. My family. We didn't handle things well. I didn't handle things well. I let you be treated in a way that was completely unacceptable, and I'm ashamed of myself. Valentina, you don't need to. Yes, I do. Because after you left, I realized something. I've been so focused on having the perfect wedding, the perfect family picture, that I forgot what really matters. I forgot that I'm not just marrying Miguel. I'm joining your family. And if I can't respect and love the woman who raised the man I'm marrying, then I don't deserve him. She sat down at our table, her eyes earnest. I know I have a lot to learn about your family, about your culture, about the sacrifices you've made. But I want to learn. I want to be worthy of being Sophia's sister-in-law and your daughter-in-law. If you'll give me the chance. I studied her face, looking for signs of insincerity or manipulation. But all I saw was a young woman who was genuinely trying to do the right thing. Valentina, I said gently, Marriage isn't about being perfect. It's about growing together, supporting each other, and remembering that love is a choice you make every day. If you can love Miguel for who he really is, including the parts that come from mopping floors and working night shifts, then you'll be fine. I want to. I really do. And Mrs. Martinez, my father would like to speak with you before the ceremony. He has something important to discuss. An hour later, I found myself in Dr. Robert Chen's hotel suite, facing a man who looked nothing like what I had expected. He was shorter than I had imagined, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and an easy smile that reminded me of someone. Mrs. Martinez, thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Can I get you some coffee? Tea. Coffee would be nice. He poured 2 cups from an elegant service and settled into the chair across from me. I want to apologize for my family's behavior last night, he said without preamble. It was inexcusable. Dr. Chen, you don't need to apologize for... Yes, I do. Because I should have stopped it, and I didn't. I should have recognized what was happening and intervened. But I was too caught up in the social dynamics to see clearly. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. Mrs. Martinez, can I tell you something about myself? I nodded. I came to this country from Taiwan when I was 12 years old. My parents had nothing. My father worked in a restaurant kitchen. My mother cleaned houses. I was the first person in my family to go to college, the first to become a doctor. I know what it's like to be looked down on because of where you come from. I felt a flutter of surprise. I had no idea. Most people don't. I've worked very hard to assimilate, to fit in. Sometimes too hard. He looked directly at me. When I saw you last night, in your scrubs, sitting at that table, I should have recognized a kindred spirit. Instead, I let my wife and daughter treat you like you were invisible. Dr. Chen, please call me Robert, and please let me finish, because I have something to tell you that I think will surprise you. He reached for a folder on the coffee table between us. Do you know that I work at Stanford Medical Center? My heart skipped. You do? I'm head of the plastic surgery department, and 10 years ago, I had an office on the 3rd floor that was cleaned every night by a woman who always left fresh flowers on my desk. Small ones, nothing expensive, but always beautiful. Daisies, carnations, whatever was in season. I felt the blood drain from my face. That was you. You probably don't remember me. We never spoke. You worked nights, I worked days, but I noticed. I noticed how you took care of that office, how you always went the extra mile. I noticed how you once stayed late to help translate for a Spanish-speaking family in the emergency room. I noticed how you never missed a shift, even when you were clearly exhausted. I did remember him, the kind doctor who always said gracias when he passed me in the hallways, who never left his office messy like some of the others. I also noticed, he continued, how you always carried pictures of your children, a boy and a girl. I used to see you looking at them while you worked, and I could see how proud you were. Miguel and Sophia, I whispered. I know, because yesterday, when Miguel was introducing himself to my family, he mentioned that his mother worked at Stanford Medical. And something about the name Martinez sounded familiar, so last night, after the rehearsal dinner, I did some research. He opened the folder and pulled out several documents. Isabella Martinez, employed at Stanford Medical Center for 8 years, custodial staff, night shift, perfect attendance record, multiple commendations from department heads, took on extra shifts to help pay for her son's education. He looked up at me. The same son who volunteered in our pediatric ward for 2 years, who was beloved by staff and patients alike because of his kindness and dedication to helping Spanish-speaking families. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. Mrs. Martinez, Your son never told us about your connection to the hospital. He never mentioned that you worked there, that you were part of our Stanford family. If we had known—" "He's ashamed of what I do," I said quietly. "Then he's a fool. Because what you do, taking care of people, maintaining the spaces where healing happens, working to support your family, it's honorable work, essential work." Robert leaned forward in his chair. "I have a proposal for you. The hospital is expanding our patient advocacy program. We need someone to help families navigate the medical system, especially families who speak Spanish or who might feel intimidated by the hospital environment. Someone who understands what it's like to struggle, to feel overwhelmed by medical bureaucracy." I blinked. "I don't understand." "I'm offering you a job, patient advocate, day shift, full benefits. The salary would be significant, more than you're making now. Certainly enough to pay off any debts you might have incurred." I stared at him. Why? Because 10 years ago, a woman I barely knew made my workspace a little more beautiful every night. Because that same woman raised a son who spent his college years volunteering to help children and families who looked like him. Because yesterday, I watched that woman walk out of a rehearsal dinner with more dignity than I've ever seen, and I realized I wanted to be the kind of person who stands up for people like her, instead of the kind who lets them be ignored. I felt tears starting again. "I don't have the education for that kind of position." "You have something better. You have experience. You have compassion. You have bilingual skills and cultural competency that can't be taught in school. The rest, the technical stuff, the paperwork, we can train you on that." I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. Say you'll let me help right a wrong that should never have happened in the first place. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Robert called out for whoever it was to come in, and Miguel appeared, still in his wedding preparations, but looking anxious. "Mom, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Sophia called. She wants to know if she can start getting ready to come to the wedding. And Doctor, Kim needs to speak with you about discharge protocols." I stood up, still reeling from Robert's offer. "I should go." "Of course." "But Mrs. Martinez, Isabella, please think about what I've said. Your family has given our family a tremendous gift in Miguel. I'd like the chance to give something back." As I walked toward the door, Miguel fell into step beside me. "Mom, what was that about?" "I'll tell you later. Mijo, right now, we need to focus on your sister and your wedding." "Are you sure you look like you've seen a ghost?" I paused in the hallway, looking at my son, this man who had somehow forgotten that the people who loved him were his greatest treasure. "Not a ghost," I said. "Maybe an angel." The next few hours passed in a blur of activity. I returned to the hospital to find Sophia sitting up in bed, her hair freshly washed and braided by Carmen, wearing the coral-colored dress she had bought specifically for Miguel's wedding. "Mommy," she called out when she saw me. "Look, Carmen helped me get ready. Do I look okay? Do I look like a proper maid of honor?" My throat tightened with emotion. She looked beautiful, though pale and fragile, with a small bandage, still covering the stitches on her forehead. "You look perfect, mi amor." Dr. Kim appeared with a wheelchair and a thick folder of instructions. "She's cleared for 4 hours maximum," she said. "Any signs of dizziness, nausea, confusion, or fatigue, and she comes straight back. I'm sending a nurse with you to monitor her during the ceremony." "A nurse? Is that really necessary?" "For my peace of mind, yes. Jennifer Chen is one of our best. She'll be discreet, but she'll be there to make sure Sophia doesn't overdo it." Jennifer Chen. The name stopped me cold. Chen, Dr. Robert Chen's daughter. She's a pediatric nurse here. She volunteered when she heard Sophia was going to the wedding. I stared at Dr. Kim. Robert Chen's daughter works here. For 3 years now. Wonderful nurse, very dedicated. She specifically asked to accompany Sophia today. Before I could process this information further, a young woman appeared in the doorway. She was about Sophia's age, with her father's kind eyes and gentle smile. "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'll be your medical chaperone for the afternoon." Sophia beamed at her. "Are you going to the wedding too? Do you know Miguel?" "I know of him, and I'm excited to be there to support you. This is a big day for your family." As we prepared to leave the hospital, I pulled Jennifer aside. "Your father and I spoke this morning." She nodded. "I know. He told me about the job offer. I think it's wonderful. Did you know about me working at the hospital before?" Jennifer smiled. "Dad talks about you all the time. The woman who left flowers on his desk, who stayed late to help families, who worked so hard to put her son through school. He's always wondered what happened to you. When he put the pieces together yesterday, he's been talking about me for 10 years. Dad never forgets kindness. It's one of his best qualities." The ride to Rosewood Manor felt surreal. Sophia sat in the front passenger seat, chattering excitedly about seeing Miguel get married, while Jennifer monitored her vital signs from the back seat. I drove in a kind of daze, still processing everything that had happened in the past 12 hours. Sophia waking up, Robert's job offer, the revelation that he had remembered me all these years, the possibility that my life, our lives, might be about to change in ways I couldn't have imagined. When we arrived at the venue, Miguel was waiting for us outside, pacing nervously in his tuxedo. "Sophia," and he rushed to the car as I parked, helping his sister out of the passenger seat with infinite care. "Miguel, you look so handsome." Sophia threw her arms around his neck, nearly knocking him over with the enthusiasm of her hug. "Careful, careful." He laughed, but I could see tears in his eyes. "I can't believe you're here. I can't believe you're okay. I wouldn't miss your wedding for anything. Well, I guess I almost did. But I'm here now." Miguel looked over Sophia's head at me. "Mom, I can't thank you enough for making this happen." "Don't thank me. Thank Dr. Kim and Jennifer here. They're the ones who made it possible." Jennifer stepped forward. "I'm Jennifer Chen. I'll be monitoring Sophia during the ceremony to make sure she doesn't overexert herself." Miguel's eyes widened. "Chen, are you related to?" Dr. Robert Chen is my father, and Mrs. Martinez. He asked me to tell you that your usual seat has been moved to the front row, next to my mother, family section." I felt a flush of something, gratitude, maybe, or simple relief that I wouldn't have to face another humiliation in front of my children. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Sophia, despite her obvious fatigue, glowed with happiness as she watched her brother marry the woman he loved. Valentina's vows included a promise to honor Miguel's family and heritage, and when she spoke directly to Sophia and me, thanking us for welcoming her into our family, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Miguel's vows were even more emotional. He spoke about the sacrifices that had made his success possible, about the importance of remembering where you come from, about family being the foundation of everything good in life. He looked directly at Sophia and me as he spoke, and I knew he meant every word. But the moment that broke me completely was when Sophia stood up, slowly, carefully, with Jennifer's help, to give her maid of honor speech. "I'm supposed to tell embarrassing stories about Miguel," she began, her voice still a little weak but clear. "But the truth is, my brother has never given me much to be embarrassed about. He's always been my hero." She paused, gathering strength. "When I was little and scared of the dark, Miguel would sleep on the floor next to my bed until I fell asleep. When kids at school made fun of my English, Miguel taught me to be proud of speaking 2 languages. When I wanted to quit school because it was too hard, Miguel sat with me every night until I understood my homework." Sophia looked directly at Miguel, who was openly crying now. But the most important thing Miguel taught me was to never be ashamed of who you are or where you come from. He taught me that our mommy is the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman in the world, and that we are who we are because of her love and sacrifice. The applause was thunderous. Sophia sat down heavily, clearly exhausted but beaming with pride. Jennifer immediately checked her pulse and whispered something in her ear. "I think we need to get Sophia back to the hospital," Jennifer said quietly to me. I nodded, but as we began to gather our things, Valentina appeared at our table. "Sophia, that speech was incredible. I'm so glad you were here." "Thank you for letting me be your maid of honor, even though I was kind of a mess." "You weren't a mess. You were perfect." Valentina turned to me. "Mrs. Martinez, I have something for you." She handed me an envelope, thick and heavy. "What is this? Your contribution to the wedding. The $30,000 you left at the rehearsal dinner. We can't accept it." I stared at the envelope. "I don't understand." After last night, after everything that happened, Miguel and I talked. We realized that this wedding was supposed to be about joining families, not about impressing people or spending money to prove something. We've decided to return all the family contributions and pay for everything ourselves. It might not be as elaborate, but it will be ours. Valentina, you don't have to. Yes, we do, because accepting that money after the way you were treated would be wrong. And because Miguel told me how you got it, what you sacrificed to give it to us. She paused, her voice thick with emotion. "I can't let you mortgage your future for a party." I felt tears start again. Happy tears this time. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. But there is one thing I'd like to ask for instead." "What's that?" "I'd like you to teach me your tamale recipe. Miguel says they're the best he's ever had, and I want to learn to make them for him, for our family." Before I could answer, Sophia spoke up from her wheelchair. "Mommy makes the best tamales in the world, but you have to get up really early to help, and your hands will hurt from all the stirring." Valentina smiled. "I think I can handle that." As we prepared to leave for the hospital, Miguel pulled me aside one more time. "Mom, I know I have a lot to make up for. I know I've hurt you, and I know saying sorry isn't enough. Miguel, let me finish. I want you to know that I'm going to do better. I'm going to be the son you raised me to be, not the person I thought I needed to become, and I want you to seriously consider Dr. Chen's job offer. You know about that. He told me after the ceremony, 'Mom, it's an incredible opportunity. You could help so many families, and you'd be amazing at it.' I'm scared. Mijo, I've been cleaning floors for 8 years. What if I'm not smart enough? What if I fail?" Miguel took my hands in his. "Mom, you raised 2 kids alone. You put me through college while working 3 jobs. You've been advocating for families your whole life. You just didn't have an official title for it. You're not going to fail. You're going to change lives." The drive back to the hospital was quiet. Sophia dozed in the passenger seat while Jennifer monitored her from the back. I thought about everything that had happened, the wedding, the job offer, the possibility that my children and I might finally be on the same page about what really mattered. When we arrived at the hospital, Dr. Big Kim was waiting with a wheelchair and a concerned expression. "How did she do?" "She was incredible," Jennifer reported. "Vital signs stable throughout, no signs of distress." She gave a speech that had everyone in tears. "Good tears or bad tears?" Dr. Kim asked with a smile. "Definitely good tears," Sophia answered weakly. "The best tears." As we settled Sophia back into her hospital room, she grabbed my hand. "Mommy, this was the best day." Miguel looked so happy, and Valentina was so beautiful, and everyone could see what an amazing family we are. I squeezed her hand. "Yes, mija, we are an amazing family. And Mommy, what Baby, I heard Jennifer's dad offered you a new job. You should take it. You'd be so good at helping other families. I looked at my daughter, this brave, generous young woman who had just given the most beautiful speech about family while recovering from a traumatic brain injury, and felt a surge of pride so strong it nearly knocked me over. "We'll see," I said. "Right now, I just want to focus on you getting better." "I'm already better. Mommy, we all are." And looking around the room, at Sophia smiling despite her exhaustion, at Jennifer checking her chart with professional competence, at the flowers Miguel had sent with a note that read, "Para la mejor hermana del mundo." I realized she was right. We were all better. Not perfect, not without our struggles, but better, stronger, more honest about who we were and what we meant to each other. For the first time in months, that felt like enough. The morning light streamed through the windows of my new office at Stanford Medical Center as I reviewed the case files for the day. Mrs. Rodriguez, whose husband was facing cancer treatment and couldn't understand the insurance paperwork. The Nguyen family, whose premature daughter needed specialized care, but they were overwhelmed by the medical terminology. The Williamses, an elderly couple navigating the complex discharge process after his stroke. Each file represented a family in crisis, people who needed someone to bridge the gap between the medical world and their own experience. It was exactly the kind of work I had been doing informally for years, but now I had the training, the resources, and the authority to really make a difference. A soft knock on my door interrupted my preparation. "Come in." Dr. Robert Chen appeared in the doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the same kind smile that had welcomed me into this new life 6 months ago. "Good morning, Isabella. How are you settling in?" "Still can't believe this is real sometimes," I admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Yesterday I helped the Garcias understand their son's treatment plan, and Mrs. Garcia started crying because no one had ever taken the time to explain things in Spanish before. It reminded me why I love this work." Robert sat down across from my desk. "The feedback from families has been incredible. Dr. Kim told me that patient satisfaction scores in our department have gone up 30% since you started. It's not just me. The whole team has been amazing. Jennifer especially. She's helped me understand the medical side of things so much better. Jennifer loves working with you. She says you have a gift for making people feel heard." I sipped my coffee, still marveling at how much my life had changed. The job had given me not just financial security, but a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I was missing, and the respect that came with it, from colleagues, from patients, from my own children, had been healing in ways I was still discovering. "How is Sophia doing?" Robert asked. "Jennifer mentioned she's applying to graduate programs." "She's doing wonderfully. The doctors say her recovery has been remarkable. She's decided to study social work with a focus on medical advocacy. Says she wants to help families like ours." "Following in her mother's footsteps." "More like we're following in each other's footsteps. She inspires me every day." My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia Mommy. "Got into the USF program, full scholarship." "Can't wait to tell you everything," I showed Robert the message, unable to hide my grin. "That's wonderful news. You must be so proud." "I am, but I'm also proud of Miguel. He and Valentina have been coming to Sunday dinner every week. She's learned to make tamales, not as good as mine yet, but she's getting there." "And how are they adjusting to married life?" "Good, really good. Valentina has been volunteering at the community center, helping with ESL classes. And Miguel—" I paused, thinking about how to describe the change in my son. Miguel is remembering who he is. He started a scholarship program at Stanford for first-generation college students. He says he wants to make sure other kids don't forget where they come from. Before Robert could respond, there was another knock at my door. Jennifer appeared, but she wasn't alone. "Isabella, there's someone here to see you." Behind her stood a woman about my age, clutching a folder and looking nervous. She was well-dressed, but tired, with the kind of worried expression I had learned to recognize in families facing medical crises. "Mrs. Martinez," the woman said hesitantly. "My name is Carmen Delgado. My mother is a patient here, and the doctors, they said you might be able to help us understand what's happening." Robert stood up immediately. "I'll leave you to your work, Isabella. We'll talk later about the conference proposal." After he left, I gestured for Mrs. Delgado to sit down. Jennifer lingered in the doorway. "Do you need me to stay?" she asked. "Please. Jennifer is one of our best nurses." I explained to Mrs. Delgado, "She might be able to help answer medical questions." For the next hour, we worked with Mrs. Delgado to decode her mother's treatment plan, explain the prognosis, and connect her with resources for Spanish-speaking families. By the time she left, she was crying, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, she said, gripping my hands. "Thank you for making me feel like my mother matters, like our family matters." After she left, Jennifer and I sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "That never gets old, does it?" Jennifer said finally. "Seeing that moment when people realize they're not alone." "No, it doesn't. Your father was right when he said this was about giving back. Every family we help reminds me of why this work matters." Speaking of my father, he wanted me to remind you about the community health fair next month. He's hoping you'll coordinate the outreach to Latino families. "Of course. I've already contacted several community organizations." Jennifer smiled. "You know, 6 months ago, you were worried you weren't qualified for this job. Now you're coordinating community health initiatives and getting invited to speak at medical conferences. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "Well, believe it. You've found your calling." That evening, I drove to Sophia's apartment near campus to celebrate her acceptance into graduate school. She was living with 2 roommates in a tiny place that reminded me of my own first apartment years ago, but she had decorated it with photos of our family and artwork she had created during her recovery. "Mommy." She hugged me tightly when I arrived, then immediately started chattering about her acceptance letter, her scholarship, her plans for the future. "I want to specialize in working with families dealing with medical trauma," she said as we sat on her small couch, sharing takeout Chinese food. "Brain injury, spinal cord injury, things like that. I want to help people navigate not just the medical stuff, but the emotional stuff too." "That sounds perfect for you, mija." I keep thinking about those first few days after my accident, when you were sleeping in that uncomfortable chair and dealing with all the doctors and insurance people and everything. I want to be the person who helps other families through that. I felt a familiar surge of pride. "You're going to be amazing at it. I learned from the best." Sophia paused, setting down her chopsticks. "Mommy, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy, really happy? Not just proud of Miguel and me, but happy with your own life?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a moment. The satisfaction I felt at work, the respect from colleagues, the financial security that let me sleep peacefully at night. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "Good. Because you deserve to be happy. You've spent so much time taking care of everyone else. Taking care of you and Miguel has been the greatest privilege of my life. I know, but you deserve to have your own dreams too, your own successes." Before I could respond, my phone rang. Miguel's name appeared on the screen. "Hola, mijo." "Mom, are you sitting down? Should I be? Valentina's pregnant? The world stopped for a moment. Then joy flooded through me so completely that I started laughing and crying at the same time. Are you serious? Really? Really, we just got back from the doctor. We're about 8 weeks along. Sophia was jumping up and down on the couch, having heard enough of the conversation to understand what was happening. I'm going to be an abuela, I said, hardly believing the words. The best abuela in the world, Chay, Miguel said, and I could hear the emotion in his voice. Mom, we want the baby to know Spanish, to know our culture, to know the stories about their grandmother who worked 3 jobs and never gave up on her family. They'll know, I promised. They'll know everything. After I hung up, Sophia and I sat in her little apartment, holding hands and crying happy tears. A baby, Sophia said wonderfully. Miguel's baby, your grandchild. I can't believe it. What are you going to teach them first? Spanish lullabies, how to make tamales, family history, everything, I said. I'm going to teach them everything. Later that night, I sat in my own apartment, a much nicer place than I had ever imagined I could afford, thanks to my new job, and thought about the journey that had brought me here a year ago. I had been a night shift janitor, invisible to most of the world, struggling to understand why my son seemed ashamed of me. I had been a woman who cleaned floors and dreamed small dreams, who never imagined that anyone important would remember her name. Now I was a patient advocate, helping families navigate the medical system with dignity and understanding. I was a grandmother-to-be, excited to pass on traditions and stories to a new generation. I was a mother who had watched both her children find their paths in life, who had learned that love sometimes means standing up for yourself as well as standing by others. The envelope with $30,000 sat on my kitchen table, returned by Miguel and Valentina, and now earmarked for the baby's college fund. The house was no longer mortgaged. My new salary had allowed me to pay off the loan within 4 months, but more than the financial security, more than the professional success. What meant the most was the restoration of my family. Sunday dinners, where Miguel and Valentina asked about my work and shared stories from their own lives. Sophia's phone calls full of excitement about her future plans, the knowledge that my children were proud of who I was, not despite my background, but because of it. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert Conference Committee, "Loved your proposal. You'll be presenting at the National Medical Advocacy Conference in Denver. Congratulations." I stared at the message for a long moment. Isabella Martinez, presenting at a national conference. The woman who used to clean floors would be sharing her expertise with medical professionals from across the country. I thought about calling Miguel and Sophia to share the news, but then decided to wait until Sunday dinner. Some news was best shared in person, around the table, with family. Instead, I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, other families were struggling with medical crises, language barriers, financial stress, and the feeling that no one understood their situation. Tomorrow, I would help some of them find their way through the maze of forms and procedures and insurance requirements. But tonight, I would simply stand in my own kitchen, in my own home, as a woman who had learned that sometimes the most important battles are the ones you fight for your own dignity, that sometimes walking away is the first step toward walking into the life you were meant to have, that sometimes, when people tell you there's no seat for you at their table, the answer isn't to fight for that seat. It's to build your own table and make sure everyone knows they're welcome there. 1 year later, the auditorium at the Denver Medical Center was filled to capacity. Healthcare professionals from across the country had come to attend the National Conference on Medical Advocacy, and I stood backstage, my presentation notes trembling slightly in my hands. "You're going to be wonderful," Jennifer said, appearing beside me with a reassuring smile. She had insisted on coming to support me, taking vacation time from her own job at Stanford. I still can't believe they want to hear what I have to say. Isabella, you've revolutionized patient advocacy in our hospital system. Other medical centers are adopting programs based on your model. Of course they want to hear from you. Through a crack in the curtain, I could see the audience settling into their seats. Doctors, nurses, social workers, hospital administrators, people whose education and experience far exceeded my own. And in the front row, I spotted a familiar face. Robert Chen caught my eye and gave me an encouraging nod. He had nominated me for the conference presentation, written letters of recommendation, and flown to Denver at his own expense to hear me speak. Ladies and gentlemen, the conference moderator announced, please welcome Isabella Martinez, Director of Family Advocacy at Stanford Medical Center, presenting Bridging World's Cultural Competency in Medical Advocacy. I walked onto the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, and thought about how far I had traveled from that night 15 months ago when I walked out of Miguel's rehearsal dinner. Good morning, I began, my voice steadier than I had expected. My name is Isabella Martinez, and I want to tell you about a woman who cleaned floors. I told them about the night shift custodian who noticed which families seemed lost and confused in hospital hallways, about the mother who worked 3 jobs to put her children through college, about the moment when a successful plastic surgeon recognized that the woman who had been making his office beautiful for years might have insights worth hearing. I talked about the barriers that exist between medical professionals and the families they serve. Language barriers, cultural barriers, economic barriers, and the simple human barrier of feeling invisible in a system that can seem overwhelming and impersonal. When we talk about patient advocacy, I said, we often focus on forms and procedures and insurance protocols, but real advocacy starts with something much simpler. Seeing people, really seeing them. Understanding that behind every patient file is a family that may be scared, confused, or overwhelmed by circumstances beyond their control. I shared case studies from my work, families I had helped navigate complex medical situations, cultural misunderstandings I had helped resolve, moments when having someone who truly understood their experience had made all the difference. The woman who cleaned floors, I continued, she understood something that we sometimes forget in healthcare. She understood that dignity isn't about education or income or social status. It's about recognizing the humanity in every person who walks through our doors. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. During the question and answer session that followed, healthcare professionals from around the country asked about implementing similar programs, about training advocates with lived experience, about creating bridges between medical institutions and the diverse communities they serve. After the presentation, I was surrounded by people wanting to continue the conversation. A hospital administrator from Phoenix asked about consulting on their new advocacy program. A medical school dean inquired about having me guest lecture. A publisher approached about turning my presentation into a book. But the conversation that meant the most came from a young Latina doctor who had been sitting in the back row. "Mrs. Martinez?" she said. "My mother cleans offices at night to help pay for my medical school. When I heard you speak about dignity and seeing people, I thought about her, about how many people don't see her, don't realize how smart and strong and amazing she is. What's your mother's name?" I asked. "Maria Elena Vasquez." "Tell Maria Elena that Isabella Martinez says she's raising a doctor who's going to change the world, and that cleaning floors isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to be proud of." The young woman had tears in her eyes. "I will. Thank you." And later that evening, at the conference dinner, I sat at a table with Robert and Jennifer, still processing everything that had happened. "How does it feel?" Robert asked. "To know that hospitals across the country are going to be implementing programs based on your work?" "Surreal," I admitted. "A year and a half ago, I was worried about whether I was smart enough to be a patient advocate. Now people are asking me to teach them how to do it." "You were always smart enough," Jennifer said. "You just needed the opportunity to show it." My phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. Watching the live stream from my dorm, you were amazing. So proud to be your daughter. Then one from Miguel Mom. Valentina and I are crying happy tears. The baby is going to have the most incredible grandmother. And finally, one from Valentina herself, Mrs. Martinez. You inspire me every day. Thank you for teaching me what real strength looks like. As I read the messages, I thought about the ripple effects of that night 15 months ago. If I hadn't walked out of the rehearsal dinner, if I hadn't stood up for my own dignity, none of this would have happened. Sophia might not have gotten the wake-up call she needed to pursue social work. Miguel might not have remembered his values. I certainly wouldn't be sitting at a conference dinner, being congratulated for work that was changing how hospitals serve vulnerable families. There's something else, Robert said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. This came to my office yesterday. I opened it to find a letter from the American Hospital Association, informing me that I had been selected as their Patient Advocate of the Year. Robert, this is... I can't. You can and you will. The ceremony is in Washington, D.C., next month. The whole Stanford team will be there to support you. I stared at the letter, reading it again to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Isabella Martinez, the woman who used to clean floors, was being honored by the American Hospital Association. You know what the best part is, Jennifer said, grinning. The press release is going to mention that you started as a custodian. Imagine how many other people are going to see that and think, maybe I have something valuable to offer too. The thought of inspiring others the way Robert had inspired me brought fresh tears to my eyes. When I returned to California the next day, Sophia was waiting at the airport with a homemade sign that read, "Welcome home, Supermom." She threw her arms around me, nearly knocking me over with her enthusiasm. I watched the whole presentation online, she said as we walked to the car. You were incredible, so professional, so confident. I was bursting with pride. How are your classes going? Amazing. I'm working with a family right now whose daughter has a spinal cord injury. I keep thinking about what you taught me, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is just listen, really listen, to what people are telling you. As we drove home, Sophia chattered about her studies, her internship, her plans for the future. But I found myself thinking about the bigger picture, about how one moment of standing up for yourself can create waves that reach far beyond what you ever imagined. That Sunday, our weekly family dinner was more crowded than usual. Miguel and Valentina were there, of course, but so were Robert and Jennifer, who had become honorary family members over the past year. Carmen from the hospital had come too, along with her teenage son who was applying to Stanford with Miguel's mentorship. As we sat around my dining room table, sharing food and stories and laughter, I looked at each face and marveled at the connections that had been forged from that night of crisis and dignity. Valentina, now 6 months pregnant and glowing with health, was practicing her Spanish with Carmen's son. Miguel was showing Robert pictures from the scholarship ceremony for first-generation college students. Sophia was explaining her research project to Jennifer, who offered insights from her nursing experience. Abuela, Sophia said suddenly, using the title she had started practicing even though the baby wasn't due for 3 more months. Tell us about the conference. Tell us everything. So I did. I told them about the presentation, about the questions from the audience, about the young doctor whose mother cleaned offices, about the hospital systems that wanted to learn from our program. But the most important thing, I said, looking around the table at these people I loved, is that none of this would have happened if I hadn't learned to value myself, if I hadn't realized that walking away from disrespect was the first step toward walking into respect. Miguel reached over and squeezed my hand. Mom, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry it took me so long to remember what you taught me about family, about loyalty, about never being ashamed of who you are. We all had to learn and grow, mijo, That's what families do. But you shouldn't have had to fight alone for so long. I wasn't alone, I said, looking around the table. I was never alone. I just had to learn to see the support that was already there. After dinner, as everyone was preparing to leave, Robert pulled me aside. Isabella, there's one more thing I wanted to discuss with you. The hospital board has approved funding for a new position, Director of Community Outreach and Cultural Competency. It would involve training medical staff, developing programs for underserved communities, and working with other hospitals to implement advocacy programs. I blinked. You're offering me another promotion. I'm offering you the chance to expand this work beyond just Stanford, to help create a model that could be used in hospitals nationwide. Robert, I don't know if I'm qualified for something that big. He smiled. A year ago, you said the same thing about being a patient advocate. How did that work out? I laughed, remembering my fears and uncertainties. Pretty well, I suppose. This is your chance to make sure that no family ever feels invisible in a medical setting again. To make sure that people like your former self, hardworking, caring, valuable people, are seen and respected and given opportunities to contribute. I thought about all the families I could help, all the advocates I could train, all the bridges I could build between medical institutions and the communities they served. When would I start? January. That gives you time to finish your current caseload and transition your existing programs to other advocates. As I considered the offer, I felt a familiar flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. It was the same feeling I had experienced when Robert first offered me the patient advocate position. The sense that life was about to change in wonderful, terrifying ways. I'll do it, I said. 3 months later, I stood in the maternity ward at Stanford Medical Center, holding my grandson for the first time, Daniel Ricardo Martinez Chen, named for his grandfather who had died when Miguel was young, and carrying both families' heritage in his hyphenated surname. He was perfect, with Miguel's dark eyes and what appeared to be Valentina's delicate features. As I looked down at his tiny face, I thought about all the stories I would tell him as he grew up. Stories about his grandmother who cleaned floors and dreamed big dreams. About his father who forgot himself for a while but found his way back to family. About his aunt who survived a terrible accident and decided to dedicate her life to helping others heal. About his other grandmother who had also worked hard to build a successful life. And his grandfather who recognized that kindness and dignity matter more than social status. What are you thinking about, Abuela? Sophia asked from the chair beside me. She had been at the hospital for the entire labor, refusing to leave until her nephew was born. I'm thinking about how much this little boy is going to be loved, I said, and about all the possibilities ahead of him. He's going to know he comes from strong women, Miguel said, looking at Valentina, who was exhausted but radiant. Women who never gave up, who fought for their families, who built something beautiful from nothing. And strong men too, Valentina added weakly, men who learned to value what matters most. As I rocked my grandson in the quiet maternity room, surrounded by my children and thinking about the work that awaited me in the morning, I felt a deep sense of contentment, not the brittle satisfaction of revenge or the shallow happiness of material success, but the quiet joy that comes from knowing you've lived according to your values. The woman who had walked out of that rehearsal dinner 15 months ago had been driven by hurt and disappointment, but she had also been driven by something deeper, the knowledge that she deserved better, that her sacrifices had value, that her love was worth more than the scraps she was being offered. That decision to walk away had led to this moment, holding her grandson in a hospital where she was respected and valued, surrounded by family members who had learned to appreciate what they had, knowing that her work was making a difference in the lives of countless other families. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself. Sometimes walking away is the first step toward walking into the life you were meant to live. And sometimes, when you build your own table, you discover that the most beautiful thing about it isn't that you get to sit at the head. It's that you get to decide who else has a place there, and you can make sure that no one who deserves respect ever feels invisible again. As Daniel Ricardo slept peacefully in my arms, I whispered to him in Spanish the same words I had whispered to his father and aunt when they were babies. Eres amado, eres valioso, eres capaz de cualquier cosa que sueñes. You are loved, you are valuable, you are capable of anything you dream. And in that quiet hospital room, surrounded by the family I had fought to keep together and the new life I had built from the ashes of old disappointments, I knew that those words were true for all of us. We were loved, we were valuable, and we were capable of anything we dreamed, including dreams we were brave enough to believe we deserved.